Okay, so this video for Year 11 is for Component 2B, particularly for my group because we didn't actually get onto these lessons as you were dismissed before we managed to get this far. So there is some likelihood that in the exam you're going to be asked about the representation of race and or ethnicity in the Taylor Swift Bad Blood or Bruno Mars Uptown Funk music videos, which are your two case studies. So this is the kind of question that you might see in the exam. So to what extent does Bad Blood challenge racial stereotypes, or to what extent does Uptown Funk challenge racial stereotypes? It's likely that you'll only be asked about one of the two videos, so it's important that you know about both so that you can talk about whichever one comes up. And this will likely be a 20-mark question. So let's have a little bit of background for those of you that are going for those 7, 8 and 9s. So when we're talking about race, it's important that we have some theoretical understanding so that we can refer back to this during the exam question. So Paul Gilroy is a cultural theorist, he's a writer, he's a lecturer. You can look him up, he's got some really interesting podcasts on YouTube. But 4 of the main points that we can draw from his theory that are going to be helpful to us at GCSE level are that people of colour, so any group that are not white, are typically represented as subordinate to white people in the mainstream media. There's actually a hierarchy within that as well. So we may say that we may see that black people are often represented as being the most subordinate to white people, with those from Asian or Arab countries being seen as less subordinate, but still subordinate to white people. People from ethnic minority groups are often shown as powerless, weak, dehumanised, marginalised and other. And we might think about examples in the media, and I'll show you in a moment examples in the media. Dehumanised, so being less human than white people, marginalised, not being part of the mainstream, being pushed to the sides. And even if you just think right now about who sits in Parliament in our country, you can see where Paul Gilroy is drawing some of these, aspects of this theory from, because actually we see mostly white faces in Parliament, so we can literally see people of colour being marginalised in Parliament, and they may be seen as other, so as different to white people. And white Western people are often shown, conversely, in binary opposition as more powerful, successful and important. And that's a key theme that we're going to have a look at, of course, for Taylor Swift's music video. So Paul Gilroy also says that the media promotes a sense of inequality of the status and power of ethnic minority groups compared with white people. So keep those in mind because you can refer back to those throughout your essay. And remember, the essay is asking you to what extent, and we know that that means that you have to give a balance. So yes, we can see evidence of negative racial stereotyping in this video, but we can also see perhaps some more positive representations as well. And then you can make a judgment about to what extent you think the video is promoting stereotypes or helping to challenge those stereotypes. Just as an example of what Paul Gilroy talks about, these are some old-fashioned adverts from the 1950s, and you can see very clearly and very explicitly what Paul Gilroy is talking about. In the advert for Budweiser on the left, we can see a black man is the servant there to the white man and his friends, who you can see in the background. And on the right, we have an example, a soap advert, where we can see the white child is dressed quite smartly with shoes and boots, the socks obviously fallen down. And on the left, we have the little black child who the clothes look dirtier, and we can see that the hem is sort of frayed. So again, an example of black people being represented as less than white people, as being subordinate to white people, not being, an example also of dehumanisation, that black people not being seen as intelligent or as as human, as white people being seen as the normal and black people being seen as other. So keep those examples in mind, and I'm sure that you can think of examples in more current media where we can see it, but it's important that we can see explicit examples as well. So the question will, of course, require you to talk about racial stereotypes. So let's remind ourselves. So stereotypes are when groups of people are considered to share the same characteristics simply because of the group they belong to. So whether they're male or female, if they're white, black, Asian, if they're able-bodied, disabled, perhaps they come from a certain part of the country. And it's grouping people together based on that one basic characteristic and thinking that they all are going to be the same, which of course they're not, because we know that people are not, you can't put people into a homogenized group where we think they're all the same. People are very individual. So stereotypes are mostly then deemed to be negative because it is an oversimplified idea of what people are going to be like. So for examples for race, negative stereotypes that we've just gone through, thinking about Paul Gilroy. And as we go through the Taylor Swift music video, we can think about some other examples for race. For example, we'll touch upon black women being stereotyped negatively as being more aggressive than white women, for example. Also, people from Asian countries being stereotyped as being highly intelligent, which of course may sound like a very positive stereotype because it's nice to be thought of as intelligent, but it's still negative because we're assuming this based just on the way that a person looks or the country that they come from. And we'll be having a look at those two examples as we go through. So for bad blood, to start with, we have people of colour being represented as untrustworthy. So Selena Gomez double crosses Taylor Swift. And we see in the video, and you can watch the video again, that she violently kicks Taylor Swift out of the window. And we can see this in the top right image there. We see this as a point of view shot from Taylor Swift's perspective. So that helps the audience to view Selena Gomez as the villain and position us on Taylor Swift's side. And this representation of black and brown women as being sort of more aggressive and violent than their white counterparts can be seen throughout the video, and we'll have a look at some other examples. But here it's very clear that we have this binary opposition of the white woman as the hero and someone who's become a victim to the villain, who is Selena Gomez. And as I say, that binary opposition is very clear there, and we have that immediate negative representation of women of colour. Let's have a look at Taylor Swift's girl gang then. So you'll have noted already that the vast majority, 90% of the women in this music video are white. And the women of colour in her gang are shown to be more aggressive than the white women. So as we go through the video, and you can watch yourself, you'll see the white women are reasonably passive. They're not making any aggressive gestures. They're kind of just showing off their weapons. They don't pull any particular facial expressions or pull any aggressive, what might be interpreted as aggressive body language. But when we come to Dilemma and Cutthroat, as you can see on the right, Dilemma punches a wall, and Cutthroat, played by Zendaya, slides a dagger across her neck with quite an aggressive facial expression. And those, as you go through the video, have a look and you will see how those two characters are in binary opposition to all of the white women who don't seem to be as physically showing off their aggression by comparison. So already here we have 3 examples of women of colour being represented as more aggressive than their white counterparts throughout the video. And not only is it that we have white women in the music video dominating, but it's interesting to note that the white women in the music video look a lot like Taylor Swift. They're tall, most of them are models, they have blonde hair. They're quite flawless, really idealising that Western white standard of beauty. And in the final battle scene, you can see at the bottom there, that the two women that are either side of Taylor Swift are two white women, and they're basically replicas of her. They have the same body shape. Taylor Swift obviously has a red wig on in this particular frame, but we can see that they both have blonde hair. So actually we have a lot less screen time as well throughout the video for black, mixed, Asian women, basically any women that are not white. A lot of the slow motion effects that we see throughout the video is also focused on white women. So that gives them even more screen time, more time on the screen for us to watch them and see their performances. And when we have scenes where there's groups of women, we can, for example, when the boxing match takes place, we can see that it's mostly white women in the background of that boxing match as well. So certainly, this is quite an interesting criticism of this music video, because we're seeing what Paul Gilroy talks about taking place in front of us, where we have women of colour being shown as subordinate to white people. Taylor Swift is leading the gang. The majority of the gang are white. We have examples where black and brown women are being more aggressive, so perhaps less human than thinking about Gilroy's theory, and showing sort of like primitive behaviours compared with the white women who are shown as being perhaps more sophisticated and a little bit more in control. We also have the issue of colorism in the music video. So something that you can touch upon. So colorism, if you're not sure, and you can go away and have a look on Google, is a prejudice or discrimination against people with dark skin tone. So really, although we've already touched upon the fact that 90% of the characters in the video are white, there's also the issue that there's really no representation of black women with dark skin tone. So it's lacking real diversity. So black women in this music video, black and brown women, are judged as beautiful and as worthy of being in the video based on their proximity to whiteness. So based on how much they can, how far they actually look, are taking on white sort of aesthetics. We also have East Asian stereotypes. So the Trinity, we can see here, played by, is it Hayley Stenfield? So she wears a white high-tech costume, signalling that she is building Taylor Swift's battle suit. Obviously, there's not three of her. That's been edited so that we have a three-shot of the Trinity. And that really, if we want to dig deep, is linking to the racial stereotype that all Asian people look the same. Now, if you go away and research this person, this actor, she is mixed race, and she has Filipino heritage. So here we can see that she's been replicated many times, like she's a robot, and all of this really linking to that stereotype that Asian people are highly intelligent, are really good with technology. I don't think it's an accident that a woman who has Filipino heritage has been selected for this particular role. We can even see through this three-shot and this close-up of her that her makeup has been constructed to make her look more Filipino, more Asian. So we do have Paul Gilroy coming through here. So the Trinity, this Asian representation of a woman shown as subordinate to Taylor Swift because she's serving her, she's creating the suit that's going to take her into battle. And it's also using that stereotype that Asian people are highly intelligent and develop technology and things like that. Okay, and then we can turn our attention to Kendrick Lamar. So the video also challenges representations of people of colour being subordinate to white people. So we can see this through the first shot on the top right there, which is a wide shot of Kendrick Lamar. He's in his high-tech office. Clearly, this is someone who has great wealth and great power and high status. He has his feet up on the desk, so we can assume that he's the boss. In the background, we can see a helicopter We see the London skyline. You know, there's lots of visual codes here to tell us that this is a person with great power, great wealth. He has strong and powerful hand gestures, and we can assume that he's the person that is actually owning this technology company that Taylor Swift is using, you know, to prepare to go into battle. And we also have the split screens. There's quite a few of them, with Kendrick Lamar on one side and Taylor Swift in equal pose on either side of the screen, perhaps suggesting the equality of those two characters as well. So we've got that, rather than a binary opposition where they're different, they're actually being shown as the same. So we do have a positive representation here of black men as being powerful and dominant and in control, and, you know, as being wealthy and having high status, which challenges Paul Gilroy's theory, of course. Okay, let's move on to Uptown Funk, because this is the other video that you could be asked about. As with Taylor Swift, Bruno Mars has met quite a lot of criticism throughout his career, based on along lines of racism. For Taylor Swift, there's lots of conversation about the fact that she surrounds herself with white women and women who look like her, whereas Bruno Mars has been accused of cultural appropriation. That's to say that he is not black, but he takes on the aesthetics of aspects of black culture in order to sell records. And when you go on to study A level, you'll be able to go into this in far more detail. But this is problematic, of course, because it's the idea that Bruno Mars is making money from kind of using aspects of black culture. And so we can see here some examples of Bruno Mars. And let's not forget that Mark Ronson is also in this music video. So we've got Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars is not black. Bruno Mars is of mixed heritage, and I believe that includes some Latin or South American, probably Latin American, and also Filipino heritage, I believe. And Mark Ronson is a white Englishman. So we've got these two characters who are not black, who are creating a record that is a soul record, and of course soul is the fact that they're making a soul record is indicative of that cultural appropriation. But throughout the video, they have lots of shots where we can see that they're kind of using and borrowing aspects of black culture in order to make a really interesting music video that's going to make them lots of money. So we have, for example, lots of wide shots to position the group of black men around Bruno Mars, and that's a key theme throughout the video. And, you know, we've also got the wide shots of Bruno Mars and Mark Ronson in the hairdressers, or the barber shop is a really iconic part of black culture in America. And you can see in the background there the posters on the wall. You know, for them to be in that barber shop may appear to be quite strange, actually. So let's have a look at some positive representations of people of colour in the Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars music video. So the settings throughout the most of the video are synonymous with black culture in America. So, for example, we've got the jazz club at the end and the brownstone buildings of New York. And you'll see those in, you know, typically used as mise en scène and sets in films by directors. And then you've also got costumes such as zoot suits, which were worn by gangsters in the 1920s, gold chains and rings. So lots of nods to the kind of costumes and aesthetics that we've seen in kind of black music genres throughout time as well. Positive representations of black men throughout the video, challenging stereotypes around gang culture. So actually throughout the video, the men are dancing, They are sort of walking along with a car. You know, there's nothing overly aggressive about their behaviour that we could link to those kinds of stereotypes. And remember that the stereotypes about black men throughout history have been that of aggression. But something to consider is that the black men standing in the street, this Bruno Mars's group, as they're wolf whistling and sort of objectifying the women as they walk past, is a potentially problematic representation, because in the past, um, black men preying on white women historically has led to some devastating consequences for black men, and I'll leave you to look that up yourselves. But that's a stereotype that has continued since slavery, really. That white women need to be protected from black men, and so it's a little bit problematic in this video that we see this sort of lineup of black men sort of wolf whistling at the woman in the street and things like that. So that could be seen as a negative representation of black men in this music video. We can also see examples in the video where white people are shown to be subordinate, and this of course completely flips Gilroy's theory around the other way. So in the video we can see Mark Ronson, who is a person of colour, being served by these two white men who are shining their shoes. So we can see then white people in the music video as having lower status. And actually, if you watch the music video and you look in the backgrounds, you'll see that the majority of the people within the mise-en-scène are people of colour, and they are sort of having coffee and walking on the streets. And, it's a really positive representation of that particular neighbourhood, but where we see white people as subordinate. Okay, hopefully that gives you a good overview of the music videos. Do go and watch the videos, jot down some notes of your own. I'll also put into Show My Homework links to other videos that teachers have made that will help you to learn a little bit more about these music videos. As always, any questions, get in touch, drop me an email.